Hey there, folks. Welcome to WP Roundtable episode 117. I'm here today with Nathan Tyler from Tyler Digital, all the way out in LA, California. How you doing today, Nathan?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty excited to be with you this evening. Looking forward to this episode for quite a while and getting to learn a little bit more about you. We met each other, I believe it was at Pressnomics earlier this year for the first time, if I am not mistaken.
Yep, that's right.
I think that was right. Maybe had lunch together in San Diego or something, but you go to enough WordCamps, you bump into a lot of people.
Exactly.
So here we are. You're finally a guest on the show. It only took 117 episodes to get you on, and excited to learn about all the things you're involved with. And for those who don't know, Mr. Tyler is involved in a lot of different things. So we're going to cover some ground here today. Before we do, let's talk about our quick picks of the week real fast. My quick pick of the week, self-serving but very genuine. WordCamp Ann Arbor is coming up, and I really want you to be there. We pulled out all the stops this year. I'm the lead organizer for this particular WordCamp, and I feel justified in doing this because Mark, my co-host, plugged WordCamp Milwaukee last year, basically every episode for months. So I think it's a really good event. It's turning into kind of like the WordCamp to be at this year, so there's a great speaker lineup. Tickets are for sale. We've got 3 weeks to go before the event, and I'm pretty darn excited about it, and also more than a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of work I have left to do, but it's going to be a great time. So Nathan, do you have any quick pick for us?
Sure. Yeah, I've really been liking runcommand.io. It's basically custom extensions to the WP CLI. So there's some free ones that just add some extra commands. So you can get like the media image sizes on your site, or if you want to run like a hook or get the list of hooks, I think there's like paid ones that are available as well. Like there's a profiler that can do like speed and profiling on the site. So it's a kind of a cool little project that's adding a lot of advanced WP CLI stuff.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty cool project.
Yeah.
Do you know who's behind it?
I think it's Daniel Bachhuber. Yeah. I believe he's the one running it.
That wouldn't be surprising at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like a pretty cool tool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. So that out of the way, we want to learn about you, Nathan. So there's a reasonable chance that there's someone watching or tuning in who doesn't know your entire backstory. And so we're going to try and do our best to fill in the details. If we could, I want to start back before you really got your career going, before you got involved in WordPress and all kinds of things like that. What is it that you really set out to do when you were younger? You said, I'm Nathan Tyler, and I'm going to go conquer the world. Here's what I'm going to do. Tell me a little bit about what that was.
Yeah, I think early on, so I used to work at a computer store, like doing retail sales and support, and I kind of started a little side business. I would sell somebody a computer or whatever, and I would go and set up their Wi-Fi and try to kind of pitch them on building some kind of automation or tool, or it usually ended up being a website. But I'd be working with these businesses on the side, and this was all like during high school and college. And then when I got out, I kind of decided to do it full time. But that's kind of how it all got started at the very beginning.
Fascinating. So you're working for a company providing retail sales, and then trying to sell your own freelance services to those customers on the side?
Yeah, it was a real small business, and they would do, like, all the sales guys would do the same thing. They're like, they would come in and sell a bunch of computers. They had a lot of business clients, like, in the local area. And then, a lot of them would have needs for, like, oh yeah, we need a website too or something. And, or I built like a billing system in FileMaker Pro for like a lawyer, a bunch of like random little projects.
Wow. So you were really willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Have you always lived in LA?
Yeah, I grew up in LA. Went to Occidental College, which is also in LA, about 10 or 15 miles from where I grew up, and then back in Pasadena now. So,
what did you study in college?
Business and economics. So no computers.
Really? So how did you learn and pick up these skills along the way to fulfill these interesting tasks that people were paying you to do?
I got started really early with the computer. My dad is an airline pilot, and so they actually bid their schedules. He used to have to go down to LAX airport to fill in his schedule for the next month and then drive home. And then really early, like 1990, they had like a dial-in service that they could like bid their schedules from home. And so we had the internet like at home super early. So I was always kind of playing and tinkering with stuff, and I got started with like a scripting language called Supercard, which is kind of like a PowerPoint that had like a scripting language built into it, into like a slide deck. So I did that kind of stuff, took C++ in like a middle school, summer school class, and always been doing this stuff on the side. And when I got to college, I very much considered doing computer science, but kind of also felt like if that was my daily homework, I would probably not want to do any more of my side tinkering. I would probably just be like burned out on it by the end of the day with actual work. And especially, I mean, I hope the programs are better now, but like when I was in school, computer science was like doing, building, searching and sorting algorithms and stuff in like machine language. And there was really no kind of real world application, stuff like PHP or, any of the web stuff. Like this was kind of even before Google Maps and the Ajax applications were coming out. So the web wasn't really like a strong platform that you would use to build applications quite yet.
What's always struck me as well, I think, and you bring up a couple interesting points, but that the academic world, I think in our industry, maybe it just strikes me that the academic world has struggled to keep up and provide very real world applicable materials. A lot of people that I encounter who study it in college tell me, and then my own experience as well, it's not exactly the same. What we're studying and learning about in college is not really exactly what people are doing in the real world. And it's hard for those curriculums to keep up with the rapidly changing industry. You often find yourself learning in a classroom the kind of skills that are quite antiquated by the time you're looking for a job. Has that been a similar experience with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some good core concepts, object-oriented programming and different sorting and searching algorithms and styles. Like there's a lot of conceptual background that I think gets covered in detail, like in computer science classes. I mean, for us building like applications and, business applications for customers, like a lot of that doesn't come into play. I mean, you just use the, search or the filter or the built-in function in a language or an external service. A lot of the classes that I found were, I did take some like comp sci. I was going to minor in it, but I didn't actually go through because most of the stuff we were doing was like writing a search algorithm or something. And it's like, I'm pretty much never going to write my own search algorithm from scratch. So,
it's funny. The other point that you brought up about having a concern over burning out on something by investing in it early, making that your serious focus, when at the time it was kind of like a recreational hobby, I think. And that's something I can definitely relate to. I've had similar sentiments and had that expressed to me before. I've had an employee who I thought would be a very valuable member of the team quit and walk away because he enjoyed doing something like what we were doing, only wanted it to remain a hobby. He didn't want that to be his career. He wanted it to stay fun. It's something he did with his pastime. And I have friends who play music professionally and pursue that as a career, which I can't even imagine. I can't imagine getting paid to play guitar, for example. That sounds like something that is just fun and recreation for me and will probably forever remain that way. But you had a similar experience where it was something you enjoyed doing on the side and chose deliberately not to pursue that in a very serious manner at a young age, but eventually came around and it did become how you pay the bills. So tell us a little bit about how you came to terms with that.
Yes, I mean, I was doing a lot of on-site and tech support, like setting up Wi-Fi, setting up networks, doing installs, and I kind of was doing that part-time during college, which was great because I could go out like on-site and, do a 2 or 3 hour job and come back and go to class and, walk away with a check and kind of be done. and that worked really well. And I thought that's what I was going to do full time after I got out. But I decided, I have enough of these clients. I could just try to do this full time and book 20, 30 hours a week on site. And I burned out on that in almost like 3 months because it was a lot of work, a lot of running around. Everything was kind of an emergency. I didn't really feel like I was working on, I was like troubleshooting a lot of issues and my phone was ringing constantly. I could probably handle it a little bit better now, but because I could probably charge for some of that phone time and whatnot, but I ran away screaming from that and started going more towards web and larger projects where I could, work from home in large chunks and actually kind of build something out for a client, something that was a little more proactive than, fixing whatever, router needed to be rebooted or something.
So in short, you gradually moved more towards software versus hardware?
Yeah. So, I still did some like custom Mac applications and moved more and more towards the web. Yeah. Gradually move in that direction.
Awesome. So it's not unusual for many of us to narrow our focus as we continue down the path of our career, and you focused eventually more and more on the web, and then got eventually involved in WordPress in particular. So what were some of the steps that you took, and how long was this process before you kind of really got to where you are now?
Yeah. So, I started with just raw PHP and MySQL, commands in the text editor. Then I think WordPress was really early at that point. And then I moved to Cake PHP, and CodeIgniter. I worked in both of those. Cake for 2 or 3 years, which is basically like a Ruby system built in PHP. It came out right after Ruby on Rails did and took a lot of lessons from that. And so I worked in that for a couple years. And then right around when WordPress 3.0, I think it was, when custom post types were coming in to core, I kind of switched over to that. For a while, I was doing a hybrid where I would have a blog running on WordPress, and I would have like kind of a custom CMS for doing all the content management and like login areas and advanced stuff on the site. And then when WordPress 3 came out, I was like, well, why am I still doing this? Most of my site and projects involve a lot of CMS and essentially custom post types. So I kind of migrated everything over right around 3.0.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sure you weren't alone in that. I've definitely been doing this for a little while. Have you always operated under Tyler Digital?
Yeah, that was my name I just came up with when I was in high school and needed something to file my like miscellaneous income under when I was doing on-site calls. I think I had not enough creativity to come up with a great name, but just enough like forward-looking vision to realize I didn't want to do just like on-site tech support forever, and I needed to pick something versatile. So just tacking digital on the end was a pretty flexible name.
That's great. And you've been able to stick with it this long, and it's still working well for you. So impressive that you had that kind of foresight. So let's talk just a little bit about the kinds of things you do at Tyler Digital now.
Okay, sure, yeah. So we have a couple WordPress plugins out on the repository. We have a paid, a pro version of a plugin called Draw Attention, which has lets you create interactive images in your WordPress admin, and then it's all scalable and responsive on the front end. So basically, like if you want to create a interactive tour of a house or something, you could have a floor plan, and as you click on each one, an image would pop up, a photo of the room or something. It's a bunch of different use cases, but that's like our main WordPress plugin product.
Sure.
And then we've got a newer product, Staging Pilot, which helps WordPress developers and agencies automate everything to provide maintenance for their clients.
Gotcha.
And
awesome.
We still do client work as well. That's how I got started, and we're still doing lots of client work.
That's a lot. That's a lot of different stuff. So you've got some free plugins out there, some premium plugins. You've got some developer product, Staging Pilot, and you have client consulting work that you do as well. So with all those different focuses going on, what's a normal day look like for you?
It's a little busy and fragmented. I've tried to organize my week and stuff by the project. So Mondays, which is today, I have a bunch of phone calls and I check in with everybody on every project, be that with clients. We have client check-in calls or just internally with developers on my team, checking in on everything. And then usually I'll have stuff scheduled out through the week. So like tomorrow, for example, I have 4 hours that I'm working on a client project. And then on Wednesday, I have time blocked for Staging Pilot, and then another day for Draw Attention. So it's just kind of broken out. So every week, it's kind of like a miniature week focused on that one area.
Awesome. So when you look at these different focuses that you have, tell me a little bit about if you maybe were to look at the amount of attention and growth and potential that each has, in the past and in the future, describe, if you can, just a little bit about where each of these have been, and then what's next for each of them. In particular, where do you see yourself spending more and more of your time, or where would you really like to see yourself spend more and more of your time? Could it be in the consulting and Staging Pilot, or in some of these plugins, or even something else that we don't know about yet?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I've always been interested in products, and I've been kind of shifting my time towards that. So I mean, a few years ago, I was 100% consulting all the time, and then I've kind of been working on building up a team to help run some of our consulting projects. I have a project manager now who's fantastic. Got a few developers, and so there's some developers that are not doing any product stuff, but they're kind of helping execute the client projects. And so there's a small portion of the projects now that I'm not really involved at any part with. Once the project is signed on, it gets run and developed without me, and I'm kind of shifting more of my time towards the products. I think there will always be, I'll always still be involved in some client work, but it'll become more and more specialized, and I'd like to spend more time developing these products. And as each product gets more success, then it can buy out, more of the time that I'm spending each week. Because certainly there's things where, Staging Pilot, we've been developing for like 2.5 years, and it's only just launched this year. So that had zero revenue for a very long time. So obviously I was, the time that I could afford to spend on it, was more limited. And I hope as sales from this and from the other products, they'll allow me to allocate more and more time towards it.
So for the rest of 2016 and 2017, do you see yourself really significantly increasing your attention on any one of these projects in particular?
Staging Pilot has been getting a lot of good using it in beta, and now actual usage for several months now. And so the reception is, there's interest in that. So I think that's one of the largest areas. We've been allocating pretty significant resources to it already. I've had someone working full-time on it for the last 1.5 to 2 years, and I've been putting some time into it, but only 4 or 5 hours a week from me is not enough. So I expect for that to go up in this next few months.
What's your favorite part of what you do?
I think it's really about, I really like doing things that are highly efficient or make an impact. When I can see, when I can write a script that, can automate something, and you see how much time that actually saves. That's what I really enjoy. And probably too much in some cases. I'll spend 5 hours writing a script to save 30 seconds. But when you see something that actually has a real impact on time savings, especially if other people are using it, and then you could actually justify the amount of time I sink into it, it's really cool to see that come together.
I'm sure. Is there a part of your job that deep down you wish would just go die in a fire?
Probably a few. Let's see. No, I don't know if there's one, like, there's aggravations to any part of the job. I mean, there's definitely problem clients. There's server problems that pop up. Like, I hate dealing with, some kind of server issue or downtime that you have to kind of stop everything you're doing and deal with some, crippling disruption, like whatever that source is, whether it's a client yelling about something or whether it's a server going down. Anything that kind of disrupts the plan and pushes you back a week or a month behind because of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely relate. So you mentioned kind of in passing, but maybe give us a little more detail on what your entire team looks like.
Sure. So we have myself, a project manager. It's like 3 developers, and then a bunch of contract developers, which are going to range from 2 hours a week to 35 hours a week, and that can go up and down just depending on their availability and our need, client load, and we'll have certain milestones on the products that we're pushing towards. So there's a lot of variation there, but pretty much everybody's remote. My project manager is just up the street, so she'll come in a few days a week. A couple of developers are East Coast, one is nearby, or 2 are nearby, and we'll drive in periodically, but it's mostly remote for everything.
Okay. And let's see. I just forgot my question. But okay. So when it comes to your customers or your clients, if you will, what is it that you would say customers appreciate about working with your team? And also, how do you describe your unique selling proposition to new prospects?
So for like contract work for clients that are coming in?
Sure. Yeah. How do you describe how you're different?
Yeah, I mean, usually in our call, we try to establish our kind of unique area is it's got to be a functionality heavy project or site, like whether that's automating something or just having some kind of data that's being stored in their site or so that customers can log in. Basically, there needs to be a business goal that the customer wants solved. And, we're pretty well positioned to take on advanced problems or ones that require a lot of technical integration with a third-party service, or any of the above. But basically distilling down whatever their business problem is, proposing the technical solution, explaining and then executing it, and being detail-oriented throughout that process. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who can build websites, and if it's just like a brochure website, we don't really take those on because, we do have, my front-end developers have great, user interface skills. We know good designers who can do a great design job, but like that's not where our strongest area is. So if somebody wants a 5-page site that, for a movie or something that looks really amazing, like that's not going to be us. Like there needs, if there's an e-commerce aspect or a membership site aspect, or if it needs to synchronize with some external CRM or with their help desk or their invoicing system, if there's a business problem to be solved, that's generally where we focus.
Gotcha. So you guys really like that interesting, complicated, functional stuff.
Yeah, for some reason.
Well, that's cool, and that's hugely in demand these days. We're doing a lot of the more custom stuff ourselves, and it's where things get pretty interesting. So you do a lot of work with external APIs and integrating different services. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the types of projects specifically that customers are coming to you, the problems they're trying to solve, and the ways that you're integrating different services and leveraging APIs to solve those problems.
Sure. So we have a lot of custom integrations that we've done, particularly like for membership sites that want to use like an external billing service. So like if they're using Chargeify or Recurly for doing membership billing for their sites, getting that really tightly integrated with WordPress. There's several projects like that. Like Chargeify has a really fantastic platform for doing really complex billing. So you can charge, you can have a standard subscription, and then you can have an add-on fee, and you can have like add-ons. Like for cell phones, you could say if it's this many minutes that they use during the month, then their billing rate is this. You can have tiered pricing. It'll prorate each of these changes. So it's basically a billing system that isn't paralleled by any of the WordPress products that I'm familiar with. It gets very granular, and it handles all that. So there's been a number of clients who want to use those services, and then getting that integrated with WordPress. We also have done a lot of custom integrations around like Slack and Asana and Help Scout and Harvest, MailChimp, Google Drive, all that stuff. So
Sure.
Sometimes with Google Drive, it's like dumping data into spreadsheets or something from multiple sources. So it could be used in different places.
Right. Yeah,
But it's really
we've
all
been
over
doing
the place.
similar projects ourselves recently with Google Drive and Sheets and MailChimp and Slack and stuff. And there's high demand for that right now. A lot of businesses out there are kind of getting their eyes opened a little bit to the potential, the opportunities that exist now are pretty amazing, and it's getting interesting. I think talking to customers how the kinds of things that are being asked for and the kinds of problems that we're able to solve. Where I'd look back just a few years, it was just a totally different landscape. We weren't even thinking about this level.
Yeah.
Do you have any fun nightmare client stories from the past?
You'd probably have to even give me a category of nightmare stories, but that's got plenty.
You can't do this for long without having a few.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the usual ones that wouldn't pay early on. Had to learn about structuring my contracts and payment milestones. They're all fairly boring in retrospect, but
traumatic when you're in the midst of
yes,
them.
very traumatic. None too lately, luckily.
anything really crazy that strikes you that you find yourself going and talking to your friends or coworkers, like, you're not going to believe what a client asked me to do, or what a client requested, or the solution that they thought would solve their problem?
I mean, everybody always wants, sliders within tabs within sliders. Like we get those in support all the time. Like for draw attention, it's a very front end heavy plugin, and we need to, in order to draw the coordinates, we have to know the size of the objects. And then we have people, literally they had a slider that had tabs inside of the slider, and then they wanted to click on a link to open it up in a light box and then have draw attention and work inside of that. And we had to issue them a refund and a support response to say there was just no way we could do that.
God, that's hilarious. Oh man, the question of if you can, when it really is a question of if you should, all too often. Yeah. So So support, how is support going for some of these products? Are you using any special tools and learning any hard lessons from premium plugin support and staging pilot?
Yeah, well, so with Draw Attention, we run everything through Help Scout. With Draw Attention, it's been difficult because our plugin relies on JavaScript, obviously, and basically anytime there's any JavaScript bug whatsoever, we kind of fall back to a thing where we output everything and we use image maps so that it'll still kind of function without JavaScript, but everybody emails us like after the WordPress 4 or 5 update, whenever jQuery was updated, and said, oh, your plugin isn't compatible with the new version of WordPress, but really it's their theme isn't compatible or any other plugin on their site is not compatible. And JavaScript breaks and therefore breaks our plugin and they contact us. So that's been very difficult, and there's been spikes at certain times that are all related to that, to a JavaScript issue, which we really can't fix. And we end up doing support or pointing them in the right direction or providing evidence that it's not our plugin, but this is actually where the issue lies and you should contact this developer with this information. But that takes time regardless.
I have to imagine that with such a front-end heavy plugin that there's all kinds of issues where that's where you have to inform the customer that it's someone else's problem or a problem with something else. This is a conflict with either another plugin you're using or your theme very often.
Yeah.
Are there any very common conflicts that you encounter? And if you don't want to name specific plugin or theme names, maybe even just categories of them?
Yeah, well, most of the theme forest themes that come bundled with Visual Composer or and have a bunch of, like, if they do any kind of Ajax loading type stuff, there's usually all sorts of weird bugs. I'm sure you're familiar with the most popular themes on Theme Forest, and they're pretty much all a problem. But yeah, it's not been fun to troubleshoot. And on the flip side, with Staging Pilot, the nice thing is that we get away from that because it is a hosted platform that's running all of the maintenance and updates and tests before and after each update. So we have less variance in the issues. We catch issues when we're importing a site if there's weird stuff going on or caching plugins or things that mess with our system. Or like, Jetpack, for example, wants to be activated on everything if it's at a new domain, but then we just add something like the Jetpack dev mode. So it's nice because each issue that we run into, we can kind of write something to handle it for the next time. And then once it's running, it's much more stable. But you have to be responsible for keeping all that architecture up and running. You have to have a lot more tests in place because every time we do like a code deploy for a new version, if it breaks, you're breaking thousands of things simultaneously, as opposed to with WordPress plugins, everybody's kind of responsible for their own infrastructure and testing and updating the plugin. And so it's the flip side for both of those things. Like the stakes kind of feel higher if you're running a hosted platform and there's a ton of more work that goes into it, but you don't have all that variation of just running it in all these environments.
Sure. Fascinating. Can you give us a bit more of a breakdown? Because I'm curious if you could just tell us just a little bit about how Server Pilot works. What are the features included, and how do you technically deliver this service to customers?
Sure. Yeah. So Staging Pilot is a platform that basically does all of the maintenance steps that you would do to provide maintenance for a client. So we're different from WP Site Care or Maintain or any of those guys because we're not actually going to fix the problem. If it happens, the cost of doing that is developer time and varies widely based on the actual site that has to be how it was built, what themes are being used. But this is basically if you are a developer or an agency and you're trying to offer maintenance stuff to your clients, like it takes out all of the steps other than actual fixing the problem when it happens. So it's similar to like if you're using Infinite WP and Deploy Bot and all these different tools. It combines all of those. So you basically upload a backup of your site, and then Staging Pilot creates a copy of that site. It imports it there. So then it would be, yoursite.stagingpilot.com, and it's a fully running WordPress install. And then every night it goes in and does every update to every plugin, WordPress core, WordPress theme. But before it does all the updates, it takes screenshots of all the pages throughout your site. And then afterwards, it takes screenshots again, and it can flag anything if it also does HTML output of your site. So it'll flag, that your homepage changed more than 10% or whatever the normal threshold is for that page. It would indicate maybe jQuery broke and your slider is dumped down the page, or maybe it white screened, or any kind of major thing. It would flag that to you and say, you would get a notification when something goes wrong and says, hey, Kyle, there's something happened on this page when we updated these plugins. You might want to go look at it. We could roll back this plugin update until you have time to look at it if you want. And then if the test does pass, you can say, go ahead and just deploy it straight to the site. So if you've got like a small brochure site where things mostly won't go wrong, you could just say, hey, if everything passes, go deploy it to the site. Or you can say, I want to give it a personal once over, once a month or whatever, and click the deploy button. It'll email your customers at the end of the month with what happened. So basically, it does all the steps from beginning to end to provide maintenance to your clients and provide them the, kind of status updates. And you're just notified, hey, there was a problem on this site. You need to go look into it and fix it. But it takes all the boring stuff out of it.
That's fascinating. So who's really the perfect customer for something like this?
Anybody, so for me, when I started building out these tools is, we saw the value of, let's get some recurring revenue from our clients and set up maintenance plans, and, we'll charge them, $75 a month or $100 a month, and, it'll be great. And then that worked great for the first site, 2-3 sites, but then you start adding up all the time that it actually takes to do that if you're using developer billable hours to do that work. So basically anybody who's running, I'd probably say more than 5 or 10 sites, or if you've gotten to the point where you don't want to sell maintenance services because it's so disruptive to your development workflow for normal projects, or that's probably, if you're doing a solo guy and you have 1 or 2 sites, it's probably not worth it. But if you're managing 5 or 10 sites or more, I think that's who our main customer is right now.
You do a lot of work with the WordPress REST API, and I was hoping maybe you could talk just a little bit about why maybe you appreciate it. Why you think it's a big step. It is useful when you interact with it. Are there moments where you're like, gosh darn, this is awesome. I'm so grateful that this is here. And tell us a little bit about those moments if they exist.
Sure. Yeah. I think the REST API is a big step for WordPress and really gives it a lot of flexibility for the next few years. The web is changing a lot, and obviously there's more and more of these third-party applications that we need to interact with, or we want to do something on our site when something happens externally. WordPress has a lot of great plugins and membership plugins and things, but there will be systems running on Chargeify, or things that happen on Stripe, or things that happen in Slack that we want to be notified of. And the REST API gives us a very nice and clean way to create an endpoint that the rest of the online world can communicate with. And it handles some of the nitty-gritty stuff for us and formats the responses. And building that stuff kind of from scratch is, it's a lot of painful work that most people don't want to do. The huge plugins like WooCommerce and whatnot have had their own API for a while. But I think this will mean that much smaller plugins can now build a small API endpoint into their plugin in a couple hours and have a lot more integration options.
Yeah, that's really powerful. You've integrated with a lot of different external services and used a lot of APIs. Are there some out there? Are there services that maybe customers occasionally request, or that you've worked with in the past in various projects that you're not a big fan of? And maybe that you dread working with when they're requested, or maybe that you say, we're not touching that again because it's a pain?
Yeah, so there's some weird ones, and they change, like Google's API, all of their APIs they've like deprecated and then changed. The newer ones are better, but lots of these services seem to do like a version 2 or a version 3 API that's like better, except doesn't implement everything that the old one implemented. Like they get partway done and they just release the API. Chartify.
And never document the new one. Just leave the
No.
old documentation.
Right. Like Chartify is kind of famous for doing that. They have like a version 2 API that's really nice, like REST to JSON API, but then like half of the functionality you can't actually access through that API, so you have to use XML and their version 1 endpoints, and it's kind of messy. That said, we've done a lot of work with with Chartify, so we definitely still work with that. But I think it was Evernote had a SOAP API for a while, which was pretty painful. Any kind of SOAP API we don't touch anymore. I don't think there's many of them left. Almost everything's like REST and JSON now.
Wow.
But they all have their idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, it's true. But it's good. I don't know if you've worked with them for a little while, if you think that you see trends when it comes to the expectations developers have for APIs, their documentation, their functionality, their usability. Have you seen things getting better, or the industry shifting a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's some fantastic ones out there. Like Asana has fantastic documentation, and they have like an API explorer. So they have like a whole interactive application where you can like look at the endpoints, and then it's like authenticated to your account already. So you can actually it populates dropdowns and checkboxes for you with content from your own organization. So you can kind of see what a live query would look like. It'll run the query for you and show you the results from your own account. And it will show you the kind of query that it built so that you can put it in your own application. So there's more stuff like that. I mean, Stripe's documentation is great. Slack's is quite good as well. So there's definitely a shift, and I think more of an importance on it that companies are starting to recognize that people use a lot of these online apps, and we need to make our stuff more public and accessible in more ways in order to be competitive. So it's definitely a shift in the right direction. And I think for WordPress, the REST API, even if it does nothing else, even if anybody could build their own API, having the REST API in core is great to just standardize the way that things are done, so that in a couple years, hopefully, when we have a few thousand plugins that all have REST API endpoints, you're not having to figure out how everybody did something differently. There's one standard, so you'll be able to hop in and integrate with one of those plugins easily.
Sure. Yeah, that's powerful. So you're a developer, you're running a business here, and still finding time to sometimes write code, which is something I rarely get to do running my business. Tell us a little bit about your developer workflow. A lot of developers that I talk to are always just keen on talking workflow. It's, what's your workflow? Let me show you my workflow. So tell us a little bit about the tools that you use, and from start to finish, how your process works.
Sure. So yeah, we use our staging pilot product for a lot of the development stuff too. So every new client project that we do, we set up a staging site, which automatically sets up a Git repository and a downloadable archive of the site, so that we can just import it in one click into desktop server. And then every commit that I make and push on the master branch gets immediately pushed up to our staging site. We use Migrate DB Pro to pull the database down from staging to local. Um, that's our basic workflow, I guess, for new projects.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really good. Do you use any kind of an IDE or anything, or any build tools or
Yeah.
compilers or anything fun in your setup?
Yeah, so I'm using Sublime. A couple of our developers use Atom, but they're very similar. But I'm using Sublime Text 3. We have a bunch of custom little snippets written. We're running Gulp and um, Gulp on our normal projects, doing kind of build type of stuff and minification. And then we've got Webpack for all of our React JS projects. So that's kind of our build process, and some of that stuff runs on the server too, like when commits are processed.
Fascinating. Sounds like a pretty good setup. And so there's a lot of cohesion between you and the other members of your team. I said you've got a couple developers and a lot of contractors. So that's a lot of different people. Do you have issues with everybody staying on the same page and following your standards? Are you the guy who sets those standards? And so tell me a little bit about just the collaboration stuff.
Sure, yeah. I mean, for just kind of project logistics, we run everything through Asana, and then we have a kind of nice setup. So in your git commit, if you put a link to an Asana task in the kind of notes section of the commit, it'll automatically link it. So we have a little bot that processes that and posts a comment in Asana to the GitHub commit, and then you have it vice versa. So you can look at any commit and see the task that it belonged to, and you could look at any task and you can get, there's a stream of comments of the commits that were related. So that's pretty good for tracking stuff down. Everybody's running like the PHP code sniffer stuff in their IDE, so we try to highlight and see those things as they come through. I'd like to get something automated running on like a post-commit hook so it can process that stuff as it's happening, but I don't have that done quite yet.
So our time's flying by here. I've got just a few more kind of wrap-up questions for you. One, do you have a favorite plugin or a favorite few plugins that you love using and people in your position doing similar work you might recommend to?
We use MigrateDB Pro on like every project. That's been pretty essential for us to be able to have everybody pull down to their locals and have fresh copies of the site, and to pull from our production to staging sites.
Awesome.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we use on like everything.
Well, it's always interesting to get the perspective from someone who could build it themselves if they wanted to. That kind of person, what plugins do they choose to use instead of reinventing themselves? That can be kind of an interesting discussion quite often, I find.
Yeah, I mean, we try, if there is something, we try to use it because it's far faster than building it yourself. We use WP-CLI a lot. Like, there's a lot of automated scripts and things that we have running that utilize the CLI. So I really like that.
Yeah. What do you suppose you would be doing if, in maybe another life, if you weren't working in WordPress and doing web stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, if I was born 100 years earlier, I have no clue if it wasn't an option. But it's pretty, other than the minor annoyances day to day, this is pretty much what I want to do. That or professional soccer player, but that's definitely not in the cards. When I was growing up, it was professional soccer player or computer something. So computer something it is.
Yeah. That's so. So you play soccer. What kind of other things do you like to do in your spare time?
Watch a lot of movies, TV shows, go hiking nearby. Like we're just a few miles from the mountains, so yeah, that's hanging out with my wife occasionally.
So here's the big question of the day. Do you think you see yourself looking into the future watching the debate tonight? You think you will?
Yeah, well, yeah. Got to watch and see what happens.
Got to see what happens. Yeah, people are going to talk about it tomorrow,
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a weird time to be an American, but
Yeah.
looking ahead at your schedule, I bumped into you at a couple events. You like to go out and mingle with the community, I see. What's on your calendar for the rest of 2016 and maybe early 2017?
Let's see. I will be speaking at LoopConf. I'll be at WordCamp US. I think those may be my only things for the rest of the year. Not sure. Yeah, I think that's it for this year.
Nice.
We'll get both of those.
You made it to a few events this year. Anything that stood out as particularly exciting? The kind of thing like, oh, I am definitely going back to this next year.
Yeah. So I always hit up all the local WordCamps. So in LA, I go to WordCamp LA, Orange County, San Diego. Orange County had a particularly cool venue this year. It was at the UC Irvine, like they have some startup incubator building. So like huge, 5-foot screens everywhere, and it was a very cool space, which hopefully they'll have it again this next year. But yeah, all those are great events that I've been to every single one of them every year for the last several years, so I wouldn't miss any of them.
Yeah. I'd like
I hear Ann Arbor is pretty good too. I wouldn't miss that if I could go.
That's what they say. I mean, I'm just the messenger.
Yeah.
Do you have any good recommendations for folks that maybe would be good guests I should invite on the show in the future?
I would have to think about that, but I will definitely follow up with you.
Great.
All right.
That would be really cool. All right, so that kind of wraps up the majority of my questions. And before we conclude, is there anything that you want to share with people, maybe an opportunity to kind of pitch or promote something that you'd like to encourage people to take a look at, if you could describe it, or if there's any way that you want to recommend people get in touch with you if they were so inclined?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you go to tylerdigital.com, that has links to most everything that we're doing. Staging pilot, if that sounds interesting at all, there's a place to go. Send us a quick note, or you can actually just schedule a time and I'll talk with you. So there's a lot more complexity to it that obviously we don't get into here. So if that at all sounds interesting, or the more advanced testing is something you want to hear more about, then that would be probably the easiest way to get in touch, just schedule a call.
Right on. And I look forward to, hanging out a little bit at WordCamp US. It's going to be a big event this year in a few months. I'm going to be there, and a heck of a lot of people will be there as well.
Absolutely.
I know.
And I'm sure I'll see you at Pressnomics again too. So we'll be, I think we're on the same circuit.
Yeah. There's a few events in this community that, hard to miss, so I look forward to that. And with that, I guess that's pretty much episode 117. Thank you, Nathan, for spending this evening with me, or afternoon for you. It still is.
Yep.
It's about time for me to call it and go have some dinner. But thanks for your time and a great discussion, and I look forward to hanging out again at a WordCamp soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.